presenting to you, and you've been on today, traditional lands, unceded traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Wurrung and the Burrung Burrung peoples of the Kulin Nation. I just want to acknowledge the elders past and present and acknowledge their ongoing connection and custodianship of this land that we are on, and extend that acknowledgement to any other First Nations peoples who are here today. You have been, as was just mentioned, from your admin, you just mentioned that you've been through a whole day of activities talking about collaboration. So I thought that we might start there. And so what I want to do is I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. I've got a stopwatch here just to make sure we try and stay on time. A couple of minutes where I would like you to chat to your neighbour about some great examples of collaboration you've heard about today. And I'm going to pick on some people to tell me about that when we're finished. So let's go. Time starting now. If you need to be in groups of 3 or 2, do that. It's fine. Susanna, up the front here. Here we go. Grab everyone's attention, please. I'm just going to pick a few of you to tell me some of the 1 or 2 of the examples you talked about. We're going to Roberto first.
I've heard a wonderful story. So lovely, amazing examples of collaboration in Gippsland, and what happened once sort of Sandvik had some funding problems, let's put it mildly that way, and how some of the collaborations continued despite the fact that so resourcefulness in the network without when the penny dropped, literally.
Thank you. Let's go over to here. I don't know your name, but I'm going to get this.
I knew you would. Well, I think a really great example of was the Purpose Precinct. I mean, that is a great collaboration that brings together an organisation that's been put together from government, with enterprise, with our universities, with all of that. But also, I think this event itself has been a fantastic collaboration. It's bringing lots of different parts of the university together and taking it out into our communities and looking at ways that we can do it. Moral Fairground have done a fantastic job bringing all their knowledge and all that together too. So, yeah, I just think this sort of thing is exactly what collaboration's all about.
Thank you. And let's go one more here.
My brain still works. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think we talked a bit about how there was a great example in the session about migrants and refugee entrepreneurs, and how one of the young entrepreneurs actually got great mentoring from someone in the local community and was actually supported to write a grant, which then led to that person getting a public space for them to be able to run workshops with other young people that are led by them. So that was a pretty great example.
Right. Thank you for doing that. You'll have another chance to chat in a little bit. But before we do that, I'm going to share a couple of examples that I like. If you haven't ever heard of, go and do some research on the O'Hare shit-in. What this is in the late 50s and 60s, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in Chicago that was displacing black communities. And as part of being moved, there were some promises made by the city around what they were going to get. It began to become clear that the city was wavering on delivering on their commitments. So the associations of that led kind of represented those black communities, hooked up with a guy called Saul Alinsky, who's an amazing social organiser, campaigner. And what they decided to do was to target the jewel in the crown of the city of Chicago, which was the O'Hare International Airport. And what they did is they went in and researched what it would take for them to occupy every cubicle and urinal in the airport so that there would be no ability for anyone who's arriving on their flights to go to the bathroom. It was going to require 2,500 of them. They had the money, they had the people already and organised, and then they strategically leaked this plan to the city. The city very quickly called them in and said, no, this is all good. We're going to deliver on all of our promises. Please don't go ahead with this plan. So it's a protest that never had to actually happen, but they organised this, and it's very famous. Look it up. It's the O'Hare shit-in. But what was amazing about this is that they were able to collaborate together, and the threat of 2,500 black Americans in Chicago occupying the airport got government to move and make sure they were not going to renege on their commitments. The other one, which is a bit self-promotional, was from our website a few weeks ago. One of our lenders kind of made a comment about why they participated in one of the loans in our platform. And it was exactly speaking to why we do what we do, which is I wouldn't have been able to make this impact on my own. I'm a very big believer in the power of the crowd. I talk about all of us being the largest impact investment fund in the world, right? It is us. It is, you know, and that's what crowdfunding platforms, crowd lending platforms, crowd equity platforms are all tapping into us to be able to invest in the things that we care about. And it's about that. It's about the power together. It's about what we can achieve together that we cannot do alone. And for me, that's exactly what collaboration is about. But my first point today I want to leave you with is that I think collaboration is countercultural. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that this dominant political, economic, cultural system that we've all grown up in and that we live in today, it's our main operating system is power over, right? The colonial forces that displaced the First Nations people here in Australia, that's power over. Like the capitalism and neoliberalism that we live in, that's power over, right? Those ideas have not won because they're better than what the First Nations people had here in Australia. They've not won in a whole bunch of other places in the world because they are superior ideas. They have won because of superior violence. And that violence is baked into the systems and the institutions and the structures that continue to operate and get reinforced with direct violence if they need to, right? So this power over is inherent everywhere we look around us. And these Western liberal democracies that we live in have given us the polycrisis that we're now in terms of wealth inequality, in terms of the impacts of the climate crisis, and all the other things that we're currently dealing with in our world. And I don't believe that as they are constituted with that power over operating system, that they're fit for purpose to solve what we're currently dealing with. So for me, collaboration is a powerful switch in the operating system that we need to get to where we want to go. It's about how do we change and learn to do differently what comes after, what comes next. We're not going to build what comes after capitalism and democracy with a power over approach. Collaboration is fundamental to that. It's currently countercultural, but it's not invisible. It still exists everywhere. You look at those First Nations communities, you look at a whole bunch of non-Western liberal democracies around the world, and collaboration is still, and that power with mindset is still very strong. But it is not strong amongst our culture, which is what I'm trying to say. And so for me, thinking about collaboration is about thinking about that power with and the power that comes with that in terms of acting together to do things that we would otherwise not be able to do. Back to you. So we heard some examples before. What I want you to spend a couple of minutes now talking about is what are the features of those good collaborations, not what are good collaborations, but what makes them work. These collaborations you talked about today, you talked about the purpose precinct, what, you know, the refugee and migrant example that you gave. What are the things about it that make it work? Like, what does good collaboration need to involve? I'm going to give you 2 minutes again. Go. Excellent. Okay, thanks everyone. Susanna.
I think it was really about understanding the group that you're working with, the community you're working with, you know, involving them in the conversation from the beginning, even allowing, you know, asking them to allow you to be involved in that initial conversation. You know, I gave the example of the two-square peg. We had the example of jigsaw. You know, it was really understanding the community rather than going in thinking, this is what we have to offer, this is what you should accept.
Wonderful. Great. Over here.
So it's sort of pretty straightforward one. So obviously both parties need to have like a shared goal. They need to both gain something from whatever they're doing.
Obvious is fine. There's no wrong answer here.
Yeah, we had quite a few points. So one, that it's having that smaller setting so you can actually find those people of common interest, and it's very useful to have a mutual person to make an introduction if you can't find each other. And we also did have having that common purpose. And you had a few additional ones you wanted to say?
It's all good, thank you. There's lots of examples, I'm sure. I'm going to share with you something from my point of view. Has anyone here heard of the Awesome Foundation? A couple of people, great. So, it's a pretty simple idea. It's a giving circle of sorts. You have a dean that gets 10 people together. Those 10 people commit to give up $100 a month to something awesome and to replace themselves if they leave. That's it. The things about this collaboration that makes it work is like the Awesome Foundation is not really a foundation. It's a global thing, right? And there are like thousands of these chapters all around the world. The Awesome Foundation provides a shared infrastructure operating system at the back. So there's one place you go, Awesome Foundation website, you find your chapter, you can apply on that website. So when you start a chapter in Melbourne, you have to build anything. All you need is to find 10 people who give up $100 and have dinner together once a month and tell people, so it's light on involvement. I don't have to do much. All I've got to do is turn up once a month and put in my $100. I might try and find good ideas. But it gives out that money with no strings attached. You can give its money to whoever it wants. There's no restrictions. It's not charitable donations. And for all those reasons, it's a really simple idea. Simple, global, replicable. It becomes locally adaptive and led. So within those broad kind of parameters, you can do whatever you want. And there's been some amazing innovation in that. There's a global Awesome Foundation chapter that does ag tech kind of stuff that puts in $1,000 per person, gives away $10,000 a month, right? But the fundamentals are the same that you can just kind of build on, and it's not taxing on anyone. And I think some of those things about simplicity, easy to be involved, not a huge strain on you and your time, are highly relevant things, because collaboration's hard work. Susanna, you've put this, you know how hard it is, right? But I think my point before about it being countercultural is one of the reasons why it's hard. We don't have a lot of good examples. We don't necessarily have the mindset that exists in people around collaborating. We don't have the skills and expertise. We don't learn it at school very often. Who had a great experience of university group assignments? No, like we're shit at collaboration, right? And we don't have the ecosystems of funding and governance to really support collaboration. Like, we've got that. Now, let's overlay that with the fact that we're living through like late stage capitalism, and we're all very busy trying to look after our loved ones and run our businesses, and we're all addicted to social media and our phones, and we're all had our attention completely atomized by these things, and we can't focus on anything for more than like 10 minutes. And it's really difficult because collaboration takes so much time. You need to have a lot of patience. And the creativity and care that really comes into collaboration is really, really hard to do when your brain's running in a million miles an hour. You've had 7 coffees in the day and you're exhausted, and like you cannot do innovation and creativity when your brain's in that state, right? And so for all these reasons, collaboration's actually really, really difficult. And so when we're thinking about how we do this, there's no excellent place to start, but starting small and starting with what you're capable of doing to begin to learn those skills, to build those muscles. Like it's the couch to 5K version of collaboration, that we kind of need to kind of begin to figure stuff out and figure out how we do this, what do we need to learn. But there are great examples out there. If you think about where collaboration happens and those kind of things, think about unions, think about protest movements, think about community organisers, think about school fates. There are people who are collaborating, organising this stuff all the time. And when I was putting together this keynote, it made me think of, do we need kind of a collaboration organisers to work in the impact sector? Like we have community organisers kind of working to organise that stuff. Because these are skills that we need to develop, the practices we need to learn, rituals, things. You know, that group I talked about who did the O'Hare shit-in, they had the example and input of Saul Alinsky, who'd been working with communities for decades to be able to come in and help them think through understanding their own power and where they could influence and leverage, right? So, you know, it's about kind of figuring out where we start and how we get started and how we learn, and recognizing it is hard and we're not going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour very quickly. But it's essential that we do, because even though it is hard work, you know, the examples we've talked about, we can't get to do some of the things we want to do unless we can figure out how to do it together. We have to figure out how we can collaborate in meaningful, powerful ways that change the world around us. I had the privilege of watching an interview. It was Thanksgiving recently in the US, and there was an interview with a Lakota man who's a historian of Native American Indian stuff. And he was talking in his thing around kind of response to Trump and climate change and whatever. And he was talking about the Standing Rock protests for the Dakota Access Pipeline, if any of you are familiar with that. He pointed to the camp, the protest camp, where all the First Nations people there were gathering from all the different tribes to coming together in solidarity to protest this pipeline going through their lands. And he pointed to that and said, look at the way that runs. There's the videos from inside. Kids were getting education and schooled. People were stepping up to teach them. People get fed. People had somewhere to sleep. No one was spending money. No one was exchanging dollars for that. There was no user pays. Everyone who was there contributed to make it possible for everyone to get what they needed. And what he pointed to, in contrast to everything outside that camp, was that operating system of mutuality and solidarity that they had. And what he said, which I found really powerful, is that is how we've survived 2 apocalypses already on our people. 2 attempts to wipe us out, but we're still here. And this is why we'll survive again when this next wave hits with climate impacts and other stuff that might happen in the US. We will survive because of this, the way that we organise, the way we look after each other, the way we care for each other. It's how they have survived, it's how they operate. Which brings me to my third and final point I wanted to make, is that I think collaboration is liberation. This is fundamental to how we embed and achieve the objectives that we want to achieve in the social impact work that we're doing, and how that becomes persistent beyond our lives and into the future, how it's going to deal with the poly crisis as we work our way through that the next 3 decades. Like, I'm tired already and it's just starting, right? How we're going to get through that is collaboration, building networks of mutuality and trust, solidarity. All of these things are what's essential and core to getting there. And I was thinking this morning, about this when I was out for a run, that this social change work that we do is a contact sport. If you haven't already got bumps and bruises or worse from it, you will, right? Like, it is tough, it is rough doing the systems change work. But it's not an individual sport. Like me out running, it's not that. Like, it's a team sport. We have to build our teams. We have to build these networks we collaborate with, these people we collaborate with, and find ways to work around the lack of institutional support. It's very hard to be funded if you are doing collaboration. Where do you go if you're a collective of individuals to access money? It doesn't happen because people fund legal entities. Who's going to be insured? Who's responsible at your board of your organisation? We're talking about collaboration, going, well, I'm not taking on that risk. Who's going to control? Like, I don't want to get sued. My job is to make sure this organisation survives, rather than solve the problem that we're trying to solve. Those are the systems we operate in, and we've got to find ways to work beyond that and build systems that can support that kind of activity. And so when I think about what collaboration enables us to do, and think about what Nick Estes, that Lakota historian, was talking about, like, we've got all these examples. They are out there. We have so much to learn. But, I guess one of the things that I have come to, with all the crisis that's kind of happening in the world right now, is you look at the Native American people, they've been through 2 apocalypses. The world's already ended twice for them. Like it might be ending for the first time for some of us, but like it's happened before and it's going to happen again. And the only way through that is together. Like no one's coming to save us. Like it's us. Like all that we have to do this is each other. And that's why we have to figure out this collaboration thing. And so when I'm looking for a metaphor for what I think that looks like, and I think about collaboration and solidarity, mutualism, I think with the work that I do in finance, in business and startups, what I see is that it's a feature, not a bug, that so much of what's happening is all small and local and distributed. Like compared to a Wall Street, like it's everywhere, right? It's small things happening all over the place that are locally owned, locally driven, locally owned, doing amazing stuff in local communities. And it's big by the nature of there's millions of these things happening, which makes me think of mycelium, makes me think of fungi, which we're really just starting to understand, like this third species on the planet that is like immensely powerful and does things in ways that we still don't really understand at all. But it's very different to flora and fauna in the way it behaves. But the metaphor for me is about, for all these nodes, they're all interconnected and they feed each other and they support each other, even though you've got a fungi in one place. It's not alone, right? And so for me, this mycelium metaphor of how we build strong, what comes next, what does that look like? It doesn't look like behemoth structures. It doesn't look like, world governments. It doesn't look like a whole bunch of stuff. It is about small, powerful groups collaborating and connecting through shared understandings, through shared networks, through shared global connections, using technology, other kinds of things, right? But it's together through that connections of care, responsibility, shared objectives that we connect with each other. And that, that is what sustains us to be able to keep doing this work and to be more impactful and more powerful and to push back against, that power over, that we can have power with others, that we can have power with communities, that we can have power with the people that we're working with as opposed to power over, despite the fact that structures we operate in kind of demand us to do the opposite. So what I'm hopeful for is that looking at this, thinking about all those examples that are out there, that we can be very powerful together, that we can have this power with, and that we can all build together what's going to come next. Thank you. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can just scan that.